The emergency meeting at Earth Command lasted 18 hours. Admiral Park Suman sat at the head of a table filled with the most important military leaders, scientists, and politicians on Earth. Outside the windows, the lights of Geneva sparkled in the darkness. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said President Kim Dae-hyun, rubbing his tired eyes. "We want to send our entire military across 40 light-years of space to fight an alien empire we know nothing about, to save a species we've never met." "That's correct, sir," Admiral Park replied calmly. "The economic impact alone could destroy our colonies," said Finance Minister Lee Soo-young. "We'd have to redirect our entire merchant fleet. Trade agreements with 12 systems would be violated. The cost would be worth every credit," interrupted Colonel Kim Min-ho. He was a big man with scars on his face from the Mars Rebellion years ago. "I've listened to those recordings from the Vellani world. You can hear children crying in the background." Dr. Lee Ji-won, the head of Earth's Xenobiology Department, spread holographic data across the table. "I've been analyzing what little we know about both species. The Vellani appear to be plant-based life forms with a completely peaceful culture. They literally don't understand the concept of violence." She touched her controls and images of the Kragor appeared. Massive insect-like creatures with razor-sharp claws and mandibles. The Kragor, on the other hand, are apex predators. Their entire society is built around conquest and consumption. According to galactic databases, they've destroyed 17 civilizations in the past century. "Exactly my point," said the president. "What can we possibly do against something like that? Our military is designed for fighting other humans, not alien monsters." Commander Choi Hyun-woo, head of the Navy Engineering Corps, stood up. "Sir, with respect, our military is designed for fighting in the most hostile environment in the known universe, the space around Sol. Our ships are built to survive solar radiation storms that would cook any other species alive. Our soldiers train on worlds where the gravity would crush most aliens." He activated another hologram showing human military equipment. "We don't build our weapons for efficiency or elegance like the other species do. We build them to work when everything else fails, to keep fighting when any reasonable design would break down." Admiral Park nodded. "The other galactic species have been living in peace for so long they've forgotten how to fight real wars. They settle disputes with economic pressure and diplomatic negotiations. But the Kragor don't negotiate. They just take what they want." "And you think we can stop them?" asked President Kim. "I think they've never fought anyone from a death world before," Admiral Park replied. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world by galactic standards. That means most alien species consider our planet so dangerous that even visiting the surface would kill them." Dr. Lee pulled up more data. The average human can survive in gravity fields that would crush a Kragor's exoskeleton. We can operate in radiation levels that would give most species cancer in minutes. Our planet has trained us to survive in conditions that other species can't even imagine. Colonel Kim smiled grimly. "Plus, sir, there's something else to consider. Those Kragor have been winning easy fights against peaceful species for decades. They're bullies. And there's one thing I learned growing up on the streets of Busan. Bullies fold the moment someone hits them back." President Kim was quiet for a long time, looking at the data and listening to his advisors argue. Finally, he spoke. "What's our timeline?" 6 weeks to get there," Admiral Park said. "But we need to start mobilizing now if we want to send more than just a few ships." "How many ships are we talking about?" Commander Choi pulled up fleet records. "Every military vessel we have that can make the journey, that's 43 ships. But if we mobilize the civilian fleet too, cargo ships, colony transports, even luxury liners, we could send over 200 vessels. You want to turn cruise ships into warships?" "Sir, any ship can be a warship if you put enough weapons on it and fill it with people willing to fight." The president stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "The other species will think we're insane." "They already think we're insane, sir," Admiral Park said. "The question is whether we care more about their opinion or about saving innocent lives." President Kim turned back to the room. "Do it. Full mobilization. Every ship that can fly, every soldier that can fight. The room erupted in activity as officers began making calls and sending orders. But the president held up his hand. "One more thing," he said. "I want volunteers only. Nobody goes on this mission because they were ordered to. They go because they chose to." 3 days later, the mobilization was complete. The response had surprised everyone. At the Mars orbital shipyards, civilian ship captains were lined up around the block to volunteer their vessels. Captain Yoon Sora, who had been running luxury tours to the Jupiter moons, was now overseeing the installation of military-grade weapons on her passenger liner. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" asked her chief engineer, Park Dong-sik. "This ship wasn't built for combat. If we take a direct hit, then we'll go down fighting," Yoon Sora replied, watching workers mount missile launchers where the observation deck used to be. "I've carried tourists to see pretty sunsets for 15 years. Maybe it's time I did something that actually mattered." On Earth, Colonel Kim's recruitment centers had lines of volunteers stretching for blocks. Young soldiers who had never seen real combat stood next to grizzled veterans of the colonial wars, all wanting to be part of the mission. Sergeant Bae Yoon-ho, a veteran of the Titan mining conflicts, was training new recruits in zero-gravity combat. "Listen up," he told the young soldiers. "We don't know what we're going to face out there, but I'll tell you one thing. Those Kragor have been picking on peaceful farmers and scientists. They've never fought anyone who fights back." One of the recruits, barely 18 years old, raised his hand. "Sergeant, what if there are too many of them? What if we're outnumbered?" Bae Yoon-ho grinned. "Son, humans have been outnumbered in every important fight in our history. The 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, the defenders at the Alamo, the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain. Being outnumbered just makes victory more satisfying." Meanwhile, Dr. Lee Ji-won was working around the clock in her laboratory, trying to understand Kragor biology from the few samples in the Galactic database. "Their nervous system is completely different from ours," she explained to her research team. "They have distributed neural clusters instead of a central brain. That makes them harder to kill, but also creates a weakness." She brought up a hologram of Kragor anatomy. "If we can disrupt the communication between these clusters, their entire nervous system should shut down. I'm working on a sonic weapon that might do exactly that." Her assistant, Dr. Nam Yuri, looked worried. "But we're just guessing based on incomplete data. What if we're wrong?" Dr. Lee smiled tiredly. "Then we'll figure something else out. Humans are good at adapting." As the fleet prepared for departure, alien diplomatic observers watched in amazement. The Mercian ambassador sent a message to his government. "The humans have mobilized their entire civilization for a military operation to save a species they have never met. This level of irrational behavior suggests severe psychological instability." The Altarian observer was more analytical. "Human economic output has dropped 23% due to military mobilization. Projected losses from this operation will set their civilization back decades. Recommend updating assessment of human intelligence downward." But the Zephyrite trade representative saw something different. In his crystalline voice, he reported, "The human response indicates a fundamental difference in their psychological makeup. They appear to value abstract concepts like justice and helping others more than practical concerns like profit and survival. This makes them unpredictable and possibly dangerous." On the day of departure, Admiral Park Soo-min stood on the bridge of her flagship, the carrier Soul's Revenge. Around her, 214 ships of all sizes and types were preparing to jump to hyperspace. Cargo ships bristled with hastily mounted weapons. Passenger liners carried soldiers instead of tourists. Even a few mining ships had volunteered, their industrial equipment converted into siege weapons. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "all ships report ready for hyperspace jump. Any final messages from the galactic community?" "Yes, ma'am. The Galactic Council has sent a formal protest about our unauthorized military intervention. They're threatening economic sanctions." Admiral Park laughed. "Tell the Galactic Council they can file their complaints with the Kragor Empire. Maybe they'll have better luck negotiating with them than the Villani did. She turned to her navigation officer. Set course for Kepler 442b. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. As the massive fleet disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward a war zone 40 light-years away, the galaxy watched and wondered what kind of species would risk everything for strangers. Back on Earth, President Kim received one final report from his intelligence services. The Kragor Empire had over 1,000 warships and controlled 50 star systems. The human fleet was outnumbered 5-1, flying into territory they'd never seen before, to fight an enemy they didn't understand. Captain Han Doyen was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The bridge of the Soul's Pride was quiet that morning. His crew was running system checks on their exploration ship as they moved through empty space near the edge of human territory. The communication officer, Lieutenant Park Gina, suddenly sat up straight in her chair. Her face went pale as she listened to something through her headset. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to hear this." Han Doyen put down his coffee and walked over to her station. "What is it?" "It's a distress signal, sir. But it's not from any human ship. The language is completely alien, but the computer is translating it." She pressed a button and filled the bridge with a sound unlike anything the crew had ever heard. It was like wind through trees mixed with musical notes, but there was something else in it. Pure terror. The computer's voice spoke over the alien sounds. Translation: Emergency transmission to all listening civilizations. This is Bloomsinger Theiss of the Villani people on Kepler 442b. Our world is under attack. The Kragor Empire has come to our system. They are destroying everything. Our people are dying. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. The alien voice continued, but now it was breaking with what sounded like crying. They burn our grove cities. They kill our sacred trees. Our children hide in the root chambers, while the destroyers take everything. We are a peaceful people. We do not know how to fight. If there is anyone out there who values life, please help us. We are running out of time. The transmission ended with static. The bridge was completely silent. Han Doyen looked around at his crew. They all had the same shocked expression on their faces. "How far away is Kepler 442b? He asked. Lieutenant Kim Woo-jin checked his navigation computer. "About 40 light-years from here, Captain. It would take us 6 weeks to get there at maximum speed." "Any other ships closer?" "No, sir. We're the nearest human vessel by at least 2 weeks." Han Doyen thought for a moment. His ship was an exploration vessel, not a warship. They had some defensive weapons, but they were not built for fighting. Still, 40 light-years was nothing in the vast emptiness of space. Someone was close enough to help, and that someone was them. "Send a message to Earth Command immediately," he ordered. "Tell them about this transmission. Include everything we just heard." "Yes, sir," Park Gina said, her fingers flying over her controls. "And monitor all frequencies. See if anyone else received this message and if they're responding." For the next 3 hours, they listened to space chatter from dozens of different alien civilizations. The Villani distress call had reached many species across the galaxy, but the responses they heard made Han Doyen's stomach turn. The aquatic Mercians sent a formal reply. "The Mercia Collective acknowledges receipt of your distress call. However, involvement in military conflicts outside our territory is against our policy. We suggest you contact the Galactic Council for mediation services." The crystal-like Zephyrite responded with cold logic. "Villani species, your situation is unfortunate. However, engaging the Kragor Empire would result in significant economic disruption to our trade routes. We recommend diplomatic solutions." Even worse was the response from the advanced Altarians. "Mathematical analysis indicates 97.3% probability that military intervention against Kragor forces would fail. Suggest immediate evacuation to preserve genetic samples of your species." Each response was more heartless than the last. Entire civilizations were turning their backs on people crying for help. Then a new transmission came from the Villani world. This one was weaker, filled with more static. "This is Bloomsinger Thys again. The Kragor ships are landing in our northern continent. They have weapons that turn our living cities to ash. We sent scouts to negotiate, to ask them what they want from us. They killed our scouts and sent back their remains as a message." The alien voice was barely holding together now. "We do not understand this kind of evil. How can thinking beings choose to cause such pain? Our grove mothers are withering from fear. Our children sing no more. If anyone is listening, if anyone cares about life in this universe, please help us. We have nowhere else to turn." The transmission ended with what sounded like explosions in the background. Han Doyen clenched his fists. Around him, his crew, looked sick and angry. These Villani people sounded gentle, innocent. And they were being murdered while the whole galaxy listened and did nothing. "Captain," Park Gina said softly, "we have a response from Earth Command. Put it through." Admiral Park Suman's face appeared on the main screen. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many wars. But right now, those eyes were blazing with anger. "Captain Han," she said, "I assume you've been monitoring the galactic response to this situation." "Yes, ma'am. Nobody's going to help them." "That's what I thought." Admiral Park was quiet for a moment. "Tell me, Captain, what's your assessment of our ship's capabilities?" Han Doyen was surprised by the question. "Sir, the Soul's Pride is an exploration vessel. We have basic defensive systems and a crew of 200. We're not equipped for military operations. I'm not asking about your ship, Captain. I'm asking about your crew, about humanity." Now Han Doyen understood. "We can't just listen to people die and do nothing, Admiral. It's not who we are." "No, it's not." Admiral Park smiled grimly. "Here are your orders, Captain. Proceed immediately to Kepler 442b. Do whatever you can to help the Villani people. More help is coming." "Ma'am, I'm mobilizing the entire home fleet, Captain. Every ship we have that can make the journey. We'll be right behind you." Han Doyen felt his heart racing. "Admiral, with respect, we don't know anything about the Kragor Empire. They could have thousands of ships, advanced weapons." "Captain," Admiral Park interrupted. 40 years ago, I was a young officer on Titan Station when the mining accident trapped 300 workers in the deep tunnels. Every expert said it was impossible to save them. The rescue would cost too much, take too long, risk too many lives." She leaned forward toward the camera. "We saved them anyway, all 300. You know why? Because that's what humans do. We don't calculate the costs when people are dying. We don't run mathematical models on whether it's profitable to be decent." The Admiral stood up. "These Villani people asked for help, Captain. Their children are hiding while monsters burn their world. Every other species in this galaxy heard that call and decided it wasn't their problem. But it is our problem. It became our problem the moment we heard those children crying." "Yes, ma'am," Han Doyen said, straightening up. "How long until the fleet arrives?" 6 weeks. Maybe 5 if we push the engines past safe limits. But Captain, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about saving one alien species. The entire galaxy is watching how we respond to this. Every other species out there is learning what kind of people humans are." Han Doyen nodded. "We won't let them down, Admiral." "I know you won't." Earth Command out. The screen went dark. Han Doyen turned to his crew, all of whom had been listening. "You heard the Admiral," he said. "Set course for Kepler 442b maximum. Speed." "Sir," Lieutenant Kim Woo-jin said hesitantly. "What if we're too late?" Han Doyen looked at the empty space ahead of them. 40 light-years away from people who were probably dying as they spoke. "Then we'll make sure their deaths are not forgotten," he said quietly. "And we'll make sure the ones who killed them pay for it." As the Soul's Pride turned toward Villani space and jumped to hyperspace, another transmission came through from Kepler 442b. This one was barely a whisper. "Anyone listening, the Kragor have taken our capital, Grove. They are herding our people into camps. They laughed when we begged for mercy. If you can hear this, remember us. Remember that we tried to live in peace." The transmission faded to static dot. In the depths of space, humanity was coming. But would they arrive in time to save anyone or only to bury the dead? Captain Yoon Sora gripped the arms of her command chair as the Gwangju's vengeance shook under enemy fire. Her ship had been a luxury cruise liner just 6 weeks ago. Now it was bristling with weapons and racing toward 3 Kragor cruisers that were each twice her size. "Damage report," she shouted over the sound of alarms. "Forward shields at 60%, called her chief engineer, Park Dong-sik. "But the hull is holding. These luxury ships are built stronger than I thought." Sora smiled, grimly. Her ship might have started life carrying tourists to see pretty nebulas, but it was built by humans. That meant it was over-engineered for survival in ways the Kragor had never seen before. "Target their engine clusters," she ordered. "Full power to forward guns." The Gwangju's vengeance fired everything it had. The Kragor ships were bigger and had more powerful energy weapons, but they were designed for fighting other aliens. Species that built their ships for efficiency and elegance. Human ships were built by people who lived next to a star that could kill you with radiation, on a planet where the weather could destroy cities, in a solar system filled with asteroids that could end civilization. Human engineers didn't build ships that worked perfectly under ideal conditions. They built ships that kept working when everything went wrong. The kinetic weapons that Sora's crew had mounted on her ship were designed for asteroid mining. They could punch through solid rock at high speed. When they hit the Kragor cruiser's hull, they went through it like it was made of paper. "Direct hit on the lead cruiser," reported her weapons officer. "Their engine section is venting atmosphere." But the other 2 Kragor ships were closing in, and Sora's shields were failing. Just when it looked hopeless, space around the enemy ships erupted in explosions. "This is Admiral Park Suman aboard Soul's Revenge," came a voice over the radio. "All Kragor vessels, you are ordered to surrender immediately." Sora looked at her tactical display and started laughing. The human fleet had arrived. Over 200 ships of all sizes, from massive military carriers to tiny converted freighters. It looked like the most ridiculous fleet ever assembled, with no standardized designs, no uniform weapons, no apparent organization. The Kragor fleet commander clearly thought the same thing. "Human vessels," came an arrogant voice over the communications channel. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. We offer you one chance to surrender before we destroy you all." Admiral Park's response was immediate. "This is Admiral Park Suman of the Human Defense Force. You have 10 seconds to begin withdrawing from this system, or we will remove you by force." The Kragor commander's laughter was like breaking glass. "You think your primitive fleet can challenge the might of the Kragor Empire? We have conquered 50 worlds. We are—" His transmission was cut off as a dozen human ships opened fire simultaneously. What followed wasn't a battle. It was an education. The Kragor had been fighting peaceful species for so long that they had forgotten what real combat looked like. Their tactics were based on overwhelming firepower against enemies who would surrender quickly to avoid casualties. But humans didn't surrender. And they definitely didn't fight fair. Captain Bae Yunho watched from the bridge of a converted cargo freighter as his ship rammed straight through a Kragor destroyer. The impact should have killed everyone on his vessel, but human ships were built to survive collisions with asteroids at high speed. "All hands, prepare for boarding action," he announced as his ship tore through the enemy hull like a can opener. His Marines didn't wait for docking procedures or formal entry protocols. They just grabbed their weapons and jumped through the holes their ship had torn in the enemy vessel. The Kragor soldiers inside had never seen anything like it. They were 7 foot tall, predators with razor-sharp claws and armor that could stop most energy weapons. They should have been terrifying. But Sergeant Bae Yunho was from Earth. He had grown up in gravity that would crush most aliens, breathing air that was toxic to half the galaxy, under radiation levels that would give most species cancer. He had trained for combat in environments where just surviving required more effort than most aliens put into their entire military careers. When the first Kragor soldier attacked him with its claws extended, Bae didn't dodge or retreat. He stepped forward and punched it in what he hoped was its face. The Kragor's compound eyes went wide with shock. No species had ever just walked up and hit one of them before. Most aliens were too small, too weak, or too civilized to engage in hand-to-hand combat. But humans were from a death world. They were predators who had evolved by surviving on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them, and they had been fighting each other in brutal wars for thousands of years. The Kragor soldiers' chitinous armor, designed to stop energy weapons, cracked under the impact of Bay's punch. The creature staggered backward, making distressed clicking sounds. "That's right," BAE said, advancing on the alien. "We're the species your nightmares were too scared to imagine." Meanwhile, Colonel Kim Minho was leading the first wave of orbital drop troops toward the planet's surface. The Kragor had anti-aircraft weapons protecting their ground installations, so conventional landing craft would be shot down. But humans didn't use conventional landing craft. Kim, quote, "S soldiers were dropping from orbit in armored pods that could survive atmospheric entry without any propulsion system. They were literally falling from space like meteors, using nothing but heat shields and shock absorbers to survive impact." 30 seconds to impact, Kim announced over the radio. "Remember, these Kragor have been picking on peaceful farmers for 3 weeks. Time to show them what happens when they mess with someone who fights back." The drop pod slammed into the ground around the Kragor prison camps at over 100 miles per hour. The impacts created craters and sent shockwaves through the earth. The Kragor guards had been preparing for a conventional military assault, ships landing at designated areas, troops advancing in organized formations, requests for surrender. Instead, human soldiers literally fell from the sky like angry meteors and immediately started shooting everything that moved. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. The Kragor were predators, but they were used to hunting prey that ran away. They had never encountered a species that responded to threat by charging directly at the source of danger. Private Lee Minjung kicked open the door of a prison barracks and found herself face to face with a dozen Kragor guards. They were huge, armored and armed with energy weapons that could cut through steel. She shot them all before they could react. It wasn't that humans were better fighters than the Kragor. Individually, the aliens were bigger, stronger, and better armed. But they had been winning easy fights for so long that they had forgotten how to handle an enemy that fought back with genuine ferocity. The Kragor expected their enemies to be afraid of them. Human soldiers were afraid. They just didn't let fear stop them from doing their job. In the root tunnels beneath the ruined city, pedal singer Liz heard the explosions getting closer. But these explosions were different. They were followed by the sound of Kragor screaming in panic. "What's happening up there?" whispered Gentle Branch Kess. Before anyone could answer, the ceiling above them exploded inward, and a figure in combat armor dropped into their hiding place. The Villani survivors huddled together in terror, expecting another Kragor soldier. Instead, a human voice came from the armored figure. "Are you Villani civilians?" The translator in the human's helmet made the words understandable, but the voice was unlike anything the Villani had ever heard. It was hard, aggressive, filled with barely contained violence. "Please don't hurt us," Liz whispered. The human removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and dark eyes that looked like they had seen too many wars. But when he spoke, his voice became gentle. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant B.A. Yunho of the Human Defense Force. We're here to help you. Are there any wounded who need immediate medical attention?" Liz stared at him in amazement. This creature looked like it had been designed by evolution specifically for violence. Every line of his body suggested strength and aggression, but he was offering to help them. "You came," she said, barely able to believe it. "We sent out a call for help, and you actually came." "Yes, ma'am," B replied, "and we brought friends." Above them, the battle raged through the ruins of the Villani city. Human soldiers moved through the Kragor positions like a force of nature, destroying everything in their path. The aliens' superior weapons and armor meant nothing against an enemy that simply refused to stop attacking. Dr. Lee Jiwan's sonic weapons worked even better than she had hoped. The frequencies that disrupted Kragor neural clusters turned the mighty warriors into helpless insects, their coordination destroyed. But the humans discovered something even more effective than advanced weapons. Raw intimidation. The Kragor had built their empire on fear. They were used to enemies who surrendered rather than face destruction, but humans had evolved on a planet where surrendering meant death. They had learned over millions of years that sometimes the only way to survive was to be more dangerous than everything trying to kill you. War-Prime Vorthak watched his invasion force collapse in real time from his command ship. In 3 hours, these primitive humans had destroyed 50 years of Kragor military doctrine. Pedal singer Liz pressed herself deeper into the root tunnel as another explosion shook the ground above her. Dirt and pieces of bark rained down from the ceiling of her hiding place. She could hear the Kragor machines grinding through what had once been her home city. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. 3 weeks since her world had turned from a paradise of singing trees and flowing gardens into a nightmare of smoke and screams. Liz was young by Volani standards, barely past her first flowering. Her skin was a soft green that could photosynthesize. Sunlight and delicate leaves grew from her shoulders like natural clothing. But now those leaves were brown and withered from hiding in the dark underground tunnels. She remembered the day it started. The Volani people had no word for war in their language. They barely had a word for anger. When the first Kragor ships appeared in their sky, the Grove Elders thought they were visitors seeking trade or knowledge. Bloom-Singer Theiss, the eldest of their people, had personally gone to greet the alien ships. He brought gifts of nectar and fruit, samples of their most beautiful music, and offers of friendship. The Kragor had dissected him alive and broadcast his screams across the planet as their declaration of intent. Liz shuddered, remembering that sound. Even now, hiding in the root tunnels beneath the burned remains of her city, she could hear Bloom-Singer Theiss screaming in her nightmares. Above her, something heavy crashed to the ground. Through the thin layer of soil and roots, she could hear the clicking, chittering sounds of Kragor speech. They were searching the ruins again, looking for survivors to drag back to their camps. The Kragor were huge, much bigger than any Volani. They stood 7 feet tall on 6 legs with massive claws that could tear through the living wood of Volani homes like paper. Their heads were dominated by compound eyes and razor-sharp mandibles that never stopped moving. But worst of all was their smell, a sickly sweet odor like rotting fruit that made Liz gag whenever the wind carried it down to her hiding place. She had seen them work. They didn't just kill, they enjoyed it. They would capture Volani civilians and torture them for hours, studying their reactions, learning the best ways to cause pain. They recorded everything and broadcast it to other Volani communities as psychological warfare. The worst part was how smart they were. The Kragor weren't mindless monsters. They were intelligent, organized, and completely evil. They planned their cruelty the same way other species might plan a garden party. Liz heard voices getting closer. She held her breath and pressed herself against the root wall, trying to become invisible. "Search Sector 7 again," said a Kragor voice in their harsh, clicking language. Her people had learned enough of it to understand basic commands. The scanners detected plant life energy signatures in this area. "This is the 3rd sweep, War Leader," replied another voice. "If there are tree creatures here, they're buried deep. Then we dig them out. War-Prime Vorthak wants all survivors for processing. The ones we capture now will be in better condition for the biofuel extraction." Liz covered her mouth to keep from making any sound. Biofuel extraction. She had heard about that from other survivors. The Kragor had found a way to drain the life energy from Volani bodies while keeping them alive as long as possible. They used that energy to power their war machines. The voices moved away, but she stayed hidden for another hour before daring to move. Finally, she crawled through the tunnels toward the main root chamber, where other survivors had gathered. The chamber had once been a beautiful underground garden where young Volani would learn to sing with the deep roots of the mother trees. Now it was a refugee camp filled with terrified, wounded people. There were maybe 50 of them left out of the millions who had lived in this city. "Liz," whispered Gentlebranch Kess, an older Volani who had become their informal leader. "Did you see what happened to the North Grove?" Liz nodded sadly. "They burned it all. I watched them use some kind of chemical weapon that killed everything green. The trees screamed as they died." Around the chamber, other survivors wept quietly. The Volani were connected to their trees the way humans were connected to their families. Watching the forests die was like watching their children be murdered. Has anyone heard from the outer colonies? Asked another survivor. Kess shook his head. The communication trees are all dead. We haven't heard anything from off-world in 2 weeks. I think we might be the last ones left. A young Villani, barely past sprouting age, started crying. Why are they doing this to us? We never hurt anyone. We don't even understand how to hurt someone. Nobody had an answer. The Villani had spent thousands of years developing a peaceful society. They had eliminated violence from their culture so completely that they didn't have weapons, armies, or even the concept of deliberately harming another thinking being. It was like asking a flower to understand why someone would burn a forest. Maybe, if we surrender completely, suggested one elder. Give them everything they want. Show them we're no threat. We already tried that, Kess replied bitterly. Remember? We sent negotiation parties to their ships. They sent back the bodies with messages carved into them. Lyse remembered those messages. The Kragor had written things in Villani flesh that were so cruel, so designed to cause maximum psychological pain, that several elders had withered and died just from reading them. Above them, the grinding sounds of machinery grew louder. The Kragor were strip mining their world, literally eating the biosphere that the Villani needed to survive. They weren't just conquering the planet, they were consuming it. I overheard some of their guards talking yesterday, whispered another survivor. They're planning to harvest our sacred grove mothers next week, the oldest trees on the planet. The group fell silent. The grove mothers were more than just trees to the Villani. They were their ancestors, their libraries, their connection to thousands of years of history and culture. If the grove mothers died, the Villani would lose their souls, even if their bodies survived. How long can we hide here? Asked the young Villani who had been crying. Kess looked around the chamber at their meager supplies. Maybe another week. The root system is starting to die without sunlight. Soon there won't be anywhere left to hide. Then what do we do? Nobody answered. What could they do? They were a peaceful people hiding from monsters with no weapons, no military, no understanding of violence. Even if they wanted to fight back, they wouldn't know how to begin. Far above them, in the command ship orbiting their dying world, War Prime Vorthak studied tactical displays with satisfaction. The conquest of the Villani homeworld was proceeding, exactly as planned. Vorthak was massive even by Kragor standards, standing 8 feet tall with battle scars covering his black chitinous armor. He had personally led the assault on 17 worlds, and the Villani were proving to be among the easiest targets he'd ever encountered. Status report. He clicked to his subordinates. Northern continent is 85% harvested, reported war leader Zrix. The biofuel extraction facilities are operating at full capacity. We're processing approximately 500 plant creatures per day. And resistance? Minimal. Some survivors are hiding in underground root systems, but they pose no threat. Our psychological warfare broadcasts have broken most of them completely. They're actually turning themselves in rather than starve in hiding. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Excellent. What about the grove mothers? We begin harvesting them tomorrow. Our energy analysts estimate each grove mother contains enough biofuel to power a battle cruiser for 6 months. Perfect. And the other colonies? Kepler 442c and 442 days have been completely strip-mined. Their populations have been processed. 442e is still under siege, but they'll surrender within days. Vorthak turned to study the holographic display of the Villani homeworld. What had once been a green paradise was now brown and gray, with massive mining operations scarring the surface. Soon it would be completely dead, just another empty rock orbiting a star. Any word from the Galactic Council about our operation here? The usual diplomatic protests, War Prime, nothing more. The other species are too afraid to actually intervene. Vorthak laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Of course they are. The Mercians, the Altarians, the Zephyrite, they're all soft. They've lived in peace so long they've forgotten that the universe belongs to the strong. He gestured at the dying. World below? This is the natural order. The strong take what they want from the weak. These plant creatures had a beautiful world, rich resources, and no ability to defend them. So now they belong to us. War Prime, interrupted a communications officer. We're receiving reports from our scout ships. There's a small fleet approaching. This system. Alien vessels, unknown configuration. How many ships? Just one so far, War Prime. But our sensors detect more following behind it. Thack's compound eyes studied the tactical display. A single alien ship was heading toward their fleet of 300 war vessels. Species identification? Unknown, War Prime. The ship design doesn't match any known galactic civilization, but it's broadcasting a message. Let me hear it. The bridge filled with an alien voice speaking in what the computer translated as a harsh, aggressive language. This is Captain Hondoyan of the human vessel Soul's Pride. We received the Villani distress call. We are here to help. 6 months after the liberation of the Villani homeworld, pedal singer Liz stood in what had once been a barren wasteland and watched a miracle happen. The burned ground beneath her feet was green again, covered with new grass that sparkled with morning dew. The soil composition is perfect, said engineer Park Dong-sik, kneeling beside a young tree that hadn't existed a week ago. The combination of human terraforming technology and Villani bioengineering is incredible. This world will be more beautiful than it ever was before. Liz smiled, feeling sunlight on her leaves for the first time since the invasion. Her skin was green and healthy again, and small flowers were beginning to bloom along her arms. A sign that she was finally healing from the trauma of those terrible weeks underground. The humans keep surprising us, she said, watching human engineers work alongside Villani gardeners to plant new forests. We expected them to leave after the fighting was over. Most species would have. Park wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. Ma'am, we don't do things halfway. When we decided to help you, that meant actually helping, not just chasing off the bad guys and leaving you to clean up the mess. Around them, the restoration work continued at an incredible pace. Human industrial equipment worked alongside Villani biological engineering to create something that neither species could have achieved alone. The result was worlds that were both technologically advanced and naturally beautiful. But the real changes were happening far beyond the Villani system. In the crystal halls of the Zephyrite Trading Consortium, Ambassador Nexus 7 was addressing an emergency council session. His crystalline body pulsed with nervous energy as he spoke. The human military intervention has fundamentally altered the balance of power in this galaxy, he announced to the assembled crystal beings. Our economic projections are now completely invalid. Explain, demanded Chairman Prism Prime. The Kragor Empire has been our most reliable trading partner for decades, Nexus 7 replied. Their expansion provided us with new markets and resources. Now the humans have not only stopped that expansion, but they've made it clear they will respond militarily to any future Kragor aggression. He activated a holographic display showing galactic trade routes. More concerning is the precedent this sets. 17 different species have already sent distress calls directly to Earth, instead of going through proper diplomatic channels. The humans are responding to all of them. Chairman Prism Prime's body flashed with alarm colors. They're responding? To all of them? Yes. Human fleets are currently en route to assist the Draxi against illegal mining operations, the Nimi against genetic slavery, and the Pelagics against industrial poisoning of their ocean worlds. The council chamber erupted in concerned crystalline chiming. The Zephyrits had built their economy on careful neutrality and calculated non-involvement. The idea of a species that would randomly start solving everyone's problems was terrifying to them. Sir, added Nexus 7 reluctantly, there's something else. The humans have offered us full military protection if we cease all trade with species that practice slavery or genocide. And if we refuse? They haven't threatened us directly, but they've made it clear that they consider economic support of genocide to be nearly as bad as committing it yourself. The chamber fell silent. The Zephyrits were traitors above all else, but they were also smart enough to recognize a fundamental shift in galactic politics when they saw one. Meanwhile, in the aquatic cities of the Merja Collective, Admiral Glubrix was briefing the Council of Currents about humanity's growing influence. The Deathworlders have established what they call the Retribution Fleet, he reported, his gills fluttering with anxiety. It's a permanent military force dedicated specifically to responding to distress calls from oppressed species. How large is this fleet? Asked the First Current, Mercia's supreme leader. Currently 47 ships, but growing rapidly. They're converting civilian vessels and building new ones at an unprecedented rate. More concerning is their recruiting policy, which is they accept volunteers from any species, not as allies or auxiliaries but as full members of their military. 3 Altarian scientists have already joined their engineering corps. A dozen Zephyrite navigators have signed up for their exploration division. The First Current's tentacles writhed with concern. They're building a multi-species military? Not building, Admiral Glubrix corrected. They've already built it, and they're using it. Last week, a human-led task force liberated 2 Mercia colonies from pirate raiders. Colonies that our own Navy couldn't protect because we were maintaining neutrality with the Pirate Confederation. The implications were staggering. For centuries, the major galactic powers had maintained stability through careful non-involvement in each other's affairs. Now humanity was throwing that entire system into chaos by actually helping people who asked for help. Sir, added Admiral Glubrix, they've offered to provide military protection for all Mercia colonies. No payment required, no political alliance demanded. They just want to know if we need help. The First Current was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Send a message to the humans. Tell them we would be honored to discuss mutual defense agreements. But the most dramatic changes were happening in the heart of the galaxy, on the homeworld of the Galactic Council itself. Secretary-General Vox of the Altarian Federation stood before the assembled representatives of 43 species trying to maintain order as the council session descended into chaos. The human delegate has requested permission to address the council, he announced over the noise. We do not recognize humanity's right to speak here, clicked war leader Zrix of the remaining Kragor forces. They are a primitive species that has interfered with internal Kragor affairs. Admiral Park Suman, representing humanity for the first time at a Galactic Council session, stood up calmly. She was still wearing her military uniform, which was drawing nervous stares from the other delegates. With respect, she said, her translator converting her words into dozens of alien languages, we're not asking for permission to speak. We're informing you of decisions we've already made. The chamber erupted in protests and demands for recognition of proper diplomatic protocols. Admiral Park waited for the noise to die down, then continued. 6 months ago, the Villani people sent a distress call asking for help. This council received that call and chose to do nothing. 43 species heard children crying and decided it wasn't profitable to save them. The Galactic Council operates on principles of non-interference, Secretary-General Vox replied stiffly. We cannot set precedents of military intervention. You already set a precedent, Admiral Park interrupted. You set the precedent that innocent people can be murdered while the galaxy watches and does nothing. So we're setting a different precedent. She activated a holographic display showing human fleet deployments across the galaxy. Humanity will respond to any legitimate distress call from any species requesting help against oppression, slavery, or genocide. We will not ask this council's permission. We will not negotiate with oppressors. We will not calculate the economic costs of doing the right thing. The Kragor delegate clicked angrily. You cannot police the entire galaxy. You are just one species. Admiral Park smiled coldly. Watch us. She turned to address the entire council. Any species that wants to trade with humanity, establish diplomatic relations, or receive our military protection need only ask. Any species that chooses to support oppression or stand by while others suffer will find themselves increasingly isolated. This is blackmail, protested the Zephyrite trade representative. No, Admiral Park replied. This is a choice. You can continue operating the way you always have, calculating profits, ignoring suffering, pretending that neutrality is a moral position. Or you can join us in building a galaxy where people don't have to die alone while their neighbors count the costs of helping them. As she left the council chamber, Secretary-General Vox called after her. Admiral Park, what if you're wrong? What if this idealistic crusade of yours leads to galactic war? Admiral Park paused at the door. Secretary General, what if we're right? What if all this time, the galaxy has been broken simply because nobody was willing to fix it? The political ramifications spread across known space like ripples from a dropped stone. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves working together under human military protection. Trade routes that had been controlled by pirates for generations were now safe passages patrolled by multi-species fleets. The changes weren't just political, they were cultural. On the crystal mining worlds of the Altarian frontier, human engineers worked alongside local workers to improve safety conditions that had killed thousands over the years. When the mining corporations protested the cost, Admiral Park's response was simple: find a way to make it profitable or find a new business. In the deep ocean cities of the Merzian colonies, human and Merzia children played together in integrated schools, learning each other's languages and cultures. The Merzia children taught the humans how to communicate through bioluminescent displays. The human children taught the Merzians games like tag and hide and seek, concepts of play that the aquatic species had never developed.